The gift of growth is very passionate to me because I have walked with Linda for about 15 years, and that growth has changed my life. Before we open the gift of growth, I've got two critically important things that I wanted to accomplish. And one of those is, if you are brand new to this kind of environment and you've never been in where you hear speaker after speaker and these just amazing truths, and you might be sitting there trying to soak it all in, and how in the world am I going to remember that amazing thing or this wonderful truth? I don't know that I can list all those, and I can't write fast enough. Well, guess what? You don't have to. You have the opportunity to ask God, what is the one thing that I must never forget from tonight? And when you wake up tomorrow morning and you think of your one thing from this evening that you will never forget, it will be more powerful to you than 20 half-somethings that you're trying to keep on a list. And the second important thing I wanted to accomplish is just for fun. That's for me. All right, so the first thing that I'd like us to do in our time together is I want us to get on the same page about growth. And then we're going to take a look at what God says about growth, and then we're going to wrap it up with why it's important. There's a little verse tucked away in Luke chapter 2, verse 52, where Jesus grew. He grew in wisdom and stature, with favor with God and favor with man. So we see wisdom, his mind. We see stature, his body. We see favor with God, his soul. And we see favor with others, his relationship, his heart. So K, like his mind, heart, body, soul, loving the Lord your God with all of those things. Something that's interesting I noticed about that list is that body and soul and heart are primarily and heavily influenced from the external. We see God deciding how tall you're going to be and what color your eyes are going to be. And then we see, of course, our soul, where we're utterly dependent on his abundance of grace that comes. And our hearts, while we can guard them and we can choose to love, we cannot control whether people like us or not. That might change with the seasons, or if you have teenagers in your home, it might change daily. But your mind is yours to cultivate. Wisdom is interactive. It's responsive. You can ask for it and receive it. You can seek it and you can find it. It can increase and it can decrease. And the most wonderful thing is that there is a book right here that God provided for us, that wisdom is not ever, ever exhausted. There's more and more and more to discover. So I want to take a quick look in here about some of the patterns that God has laid out for us about how to grow in wisdom. And I'm going to briefly touch on them, kind of like a skipping stone across the lake. Plunk, ripple. Okay? So we're going to skim fairly quickly. But if you're one that likes to write a lot of things and keep notes going, the scripture and the words that we're going to skim over really quickly are documented in your program so that we can just look at them real quick right now. So simply, they're action words. They're observe, listen, think, and do. We have an invitation to observe in 1 Chronicles. That's the kind of looking that God's talking about that is kind of a careful noticing of something. It's your opportunity to not only be aware, but to focus. Then we have a command that we see in the book of Luke about listening, where he says, "This is my son whom I have chosen. Listen to him," period. We also have a characteristic in the book of John about listening, where he says, "Those that follow me, my sheep, listen." So this hearing is our opportunity to be attentive. Then, of course, in Romans 12:2, we have the famous fact that if you would like transformation, that happens only through the renewing of your mind in his word. This thinking, this studying, challenging pursuit of his word and what it means and how to apply it. These are your opportunities to be selective. Now, you might be at a very challenging or painful place in life. Maybe you're even going through some crisis. Your learning selectivity at this point could very much look like this question: what does God want me to learn through this? Maybe you're at a very calm and peaceful, pleasant space in life, and your selectivity can look like this: what does God want me to learn about? This is when you can choose and you can find what you delight in or that you interest in. And lastly, we see God's pattern about doing in the book of James, where we can experience and practice. And when you get out there and you do it, then you see how much more wisdom you need, and you spiral right back around to looking and listening and thinking and asking. All of these describe the picture of abiding, the walking with the Lord, being under the yoke with him, the refining and transforming process. This is the potter and the clay. Is your life characterized by teachability? Teachability is simply the capability and willingness to gain new ideas that once were not known to you. Oh, this is when I want to dig in, and I want to talk about how we could filter in order to focus, how we could talk about the two enemies of the soul, and how we could cultivate habits of pause and quiet. This is where I feel like I want to overflow with the 10, 15 years that Linda poured into me, that just everywhere I go just exudes and spills out. But we'll save that for another day and another gathering, because we want to get to the heart. Here's the heart of the matter. Why is all this important? Why do we have the asking, the looking, the listening, the thinking? Because of the plunk, the doing. Whew. The doing, this is where growth matters. Your path of your growth is connected to your calling. We've heard lots of these speakers say tonight, use your gifts. Do you know what you've been called for? Do you know what you're called to do? Are you fully equipped to do it? Now, while I'm asking this, just to spark your curiosity if you've never defined it or simply clarified it, and I certainly don't want you to panic if you don't know the answer, but what I want you to remember is it's imperative to ask the question, do you know what you're called to do? How you answer is critical because it determines your next steps. So here's my story applying that little piece. When Linda first invited me to speak this evening, I said, no, life is pretty hard right now, and I am overwhelmed, basically, and I'm not feeling settled. We are moving. My life is in boxes. I'm not organized. I don't think so. And besides, this is Legacy Principles. We've been doing dinner club for a long, long time, and like my girls are here, and I want to be sitting down there, and I'm going to be taking lots of notes with my scratchy little pencil, and I want to choose my one thing because I'm going to work on it tomorrow. And the irony of all that is, in Legacy Principles, we have a nice, delightful full month where we ask that question. What are you called to do? And we read, and we listened, and we prayed, and we thought, and we carved it out, and we wrote it down. And God said to me, you are created to live and to know and share truth, inspire growth, and extend hope. Do you think those gifts, Wozniak, are for you? Do you think your mission is when it's convenient or when you feel like doing it? Okay, so now my invitation looks a little bit more like obedience. Okay, so what resonated with me that Greg said is that you trust him enough to obey. So when I think about avoiding hard things, I realize that growth only happens with effort. And growth only happens when you trust and you obey. One of my absolute favorite scriptures of all time is Luke 9:51, and it's a little sentence that says, Jesus resolutely set out. Oh, how I want to be a woman who resolutely sets out with what the Lord has called me to do. And at the end of this life, all of my asking and looking and thinking and doing and wondering what's most important to him, what a day of rejoicing that will be.